an architecture media podcast, supported by the Australian Institute of Architects, produced on Boon Wurrung country.
Welcome to Design Speaks Weekly, a podcast that explores the biggest stories in Australian architecture and design. I'm your host, Georgia Burks, and today, Katelin Butler, editorial director at Architecture Media, speaks with renowned Australian architect Sean Godsell about the future of architecture and the opportunities he sees for the next generation of professionals. But first, here's the latest news headlines from Architecture AU.
In the news this week, Hobart's $1.13 billion Macquarie Point Stadium has received final approval from Tasmania's Upper House of Parliament after years of debate over the stadium's scale, location and cost. The upper chamber voted 9-5 in favour, with the AFL hailing it a historic day. And 30 emerging architects have been shortlisted for the 2026 Australian Institute of Architects Dual Lux Study Tour. The shortlisted entrants will now proceed to the next stage of judging, where 5 individuals will be selected for the 10-day international experience. Those are the headlines for this week. For the full stories and more news, visit architectureau.com. I'm Adair Winder. It's Tuesday, December 9.
Sean Godsell has won numerous local and international awards, including the Gold Medal of the Australian Institute of Architects in 2022. In his 30 years of practising architecture, Sean has garnered a wealth of experience and knowledge, and he is now keen to pass some of his findings on to the next generation of architects. In this episode, Katelin Butler, editorial director at Architecture Media, asks Sean to reflect on his own career, the current state of the profession, and what future designers might consider in their own career journeys.
Well, hello, Sean. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Katelin, for inviting me. I'm very happy to be here.
Now, Sean, throughout your long career, and perhaps even more so lately, you've shown a strong interest in the next generation of architects through teaching, lectures, and your significant contribution to the Institute's Generation Exchange program that connects senior architects with emerging practitioners. What potential do you see in this new cohort of design professionals?
Oh, there's a huge amount of potential. I think it's always exciting to talk to younger practitioners and recent graduates and hear what they have to say and what they think about the profession. And I find that sort of exchange enjoyable. And the generation exchange idea was my attempt to acknowledge how important senior architects were for me when I was younger, and I haven't forgotten that. And I hope that structure manages to survive. It's a way of getting young architects around the table with senior and retired architects and having an exchange of ideas and thoughts. It's a nice thing to do. I was really lucky last year to be a visiting professor at Harvard, and I took my class of 11 to Broken Hill where I'd set the project. And I enjoyed that immensely. They were master's students and recent graduates, and some of them were actually practitioners. And it was great to see that exchange on a more multicultural level. So I always find that edifying, and I think it's a really important part of the profession that we support and encourage young architects where we can. I guess that makes me sound old, doesn't it? I probably am.
Not at all. And what's inspiring you about what you're seeing coming through?
I love to see the passion. The Harvard kids were, well, they weren't kids, they were adults, but they were so enthusiastic about the problem. I said the theme of the studio was critical environmentalism, and it was an attempt to link the problem of climate change with the need for architects to express themselves locally. So in the middle of the outback, with nothing around, we investigated how local might influence the global problem. And they took it on board with a huge amount of enthusiasm and dedication, which I thought was great.
Yeah, amazing. And more locally in Australia, is there through those generation exchange programs, and actually I think through your Gold Medal tour in 2022, you also had a series of events or breakfasts, I think, with the Imagine cohort, so the Emerging Architects group. Were there some interesting conversations that you had throughout those sessions?
Oh, yeah. Like the thing about architecture is it's this sort of continuum of information. So you tap into the line of information that's been going for thousands of years when you're young, and you tap in with a degree of blissful ignorance. So inevitably over time, architects become a little bit more cynical about life and just through experience understand that it's not completely utopian. But sharing those pearls of wisdom is fun because the questions at times are really interesting and at times very naive. And that naivety is actually important. We say in the office that you can only be an architect when you can remember what it was like to be a child and recall those childhood memories and imagine a better world and so on. So those exchanges with younger architects are really nice in that level.
Absolutely. I guess to pull out a little bit from the specific next generation, but more recently the role of the architect has found itself in a state of flux. And unfortunately, in some circumstances, the value of our profession has appeared to be questioned. How do you think architects practising today, particularly those starting out, can retain relevance in our society?
It's a good question. I've always stolen Louis Sullivan's advice to recent graduates in a lecture that he gave at the turn of the last century, and that is that architects have to be good observers of society and interpret society's needs and wants, and we do that through the design and construction of buildings. That's a simplistic but fairly potent description of what architects do. So we have to remember that. We're not politicians. We're not. We can become advocates for things, but when our training is in designing buildings. So we do well to remember that. And on that point, we have to remember too that everyone benefits from good design. So if I design a building that the public encounter, then I have to consider the public. If I design a private dwelling for a person, then I have to consider their particular needs. But that doesn't mean that the client is in particular the only person who has to benefit from that work. And so I think that's fundamental. And the other point of the question that you asked me is the issue of procurement. And that's where we're struggling as a profession. Our role is diminished. Our conventional role, I can't stand the word traditional, our conventional role is to design, document and administer. And we do less of that. More architects are employed directly by builders now, which makes them builders, not architects. And procurement models and contract structures are causing the profession to be marginalised, and that makes it harder. My office is run in a very conventional way. We still do full documentation. We run lump sum contracts, and we insist on that typically because it ensures our role. But I know a lot of architects are doing D&C contracts and so on. So I think that's a problem.
I think actually one thing you said to me once was, or maybe I heard you say it at a talk or a presentation, the only way architecture progresses is if there is a degree of courage. Can you expand on that a little for us?
The difference between architecture and building. And you can do a building and claim it's architecture, but it's not because it's not challenging anything. So one of our roles and one of the ways we serve the community best is we have to be prepared to question things, ask if there's a better way or a different way, and have the courage to pursue that. There's no architecture in the safety of the middle of the table. You have to get to the edge and be prepared to fall or fly to make a difference. And I guess what I'm seeing a lot of now is a lot of work that's in the safety of the centre of the table. Risk aversion is a problem in society generally and in architecture. And if you're not prepared to take a risk and fail, then you're probably not going to do anything that's really noteworthy. And those risks aren't careless or capricious. They have to be considered and intelligent, but they have to be in the work. Or what are you doing? You're doing what anyone can do.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that kind of leads me to my next question, actually, which is what advice would you give to your younger self? And then what advice would you more broadly extend to the next generation of architects?
Those questions are fantastic. That's like saying, what's your favourite colour?
What's your favourite colour?
I don't have a favourite colour. What advice would I give myself? Well, I don't think I was going to be anything other than an architect, so I wouldn't be saying don't do architecture. I would say work harder than you possibly can imagine you could work. That's always good advice, isn't it? The secret recipe, work hard.
And then what to others?
Yeah, work hard. Talent's never enough. I know far more talented people than I, and I know that the combination of talent and work ethic is everything. So you've just got to be prepared to keep going.
So you need good stamina.
Stamina, that's what Dad told me. When I got into architecture at Melbourne University, he wrote a list of things that were important to be a good architect, and the very first thing on the list was stamina. Just keep going. You'll get there. You have to be patient as an architect. It doesn't happen instantly. And I guess that's an observation that I make of young architects, that everything is instantaneous. In a certain age group, you get the information through your phone immediately all the time, and buildings are slower than that. If I was to advise myself looking back, I'd say be more patient, be more timely and considered in the way you go about things. But that's hard to do.
Especially hard to do in this day and age with our technology-ridden society. It's a good thing. It's a great thing actually in lots of ways, but also it's really challenging. We're sort of bombarded with content left, right and centre, so it's hard to pick what we should stop and take time to digest and understand. And
it's so true and such a challenge, and we see that with our children and recent legislation, and we see it in the world of architecture because everything's accessible now. When I started, you got books from the library to see what was going on. That was the most recent information you could get with journals. Progressive architecture or architecture review would arrive in the mail. Now you just click and get it, and it's probably too much information. One of the challenges for young architects is to figure out what exactly it is you like and don't like, and want to achieve and don't want to achieve. And in that circumstance of being bombarded with especially visual information, it's hard to do.
Absolutely. I think it's hard to navigate what you should trust or what you shouldn't trust. Yeah, I think it's a really challenging world we're living in at the moment, architect or otherwise.
Architect or otherwise. You think about materials. What materials do I like? Well, I've seen 20,000 Instagram images of certain materials. It doesn't mean you know the material or you understand it or will use it successfully. So it's sort of like too much information. Better to go and use the material somehow, somewhere, and find out that way.
Absolutely. Well, you've already answered that if you had your time over that you would still pursue a career in architecture, so that's sorted. But if not, what else would you do?
I'd probably be dead.
You'd probably be what?
Dead.
Dead? Oh, gosh. That's a bit morbid.
I think the curse of being an architect is that you don't stop. You keep going. And
it keeps you going.
It keeps you going. So I can't contemplate doing anything other than what I'm doing.
Well, that's quite, an inspiring kind of comment really in a way if we flip it around, because it is something that keeps you going. It's not just that you have to do it. It's something that really propels you.
Well, I was talking to Glenn the other day about something and
is that Glenn Murcutt?
Yes, and we were laughing about how the fact that we both probably end our mortal coil at our drawing boards.
Oh, dear.
And that's not morbid, that's just a reality.
Reality. Okay, well, I'll leave that to be your reality, maybe not everybody's reality. There's no pressure to be that kind of architect. To conclude, as always, I'd like to ask you what's getting you excited at the moment or inspired?
Oh, that's an easy question. For me at the moment, it's watching my granddaughter and my son and his wife, just seeing what a beautiful relationship they all have.
Amazing.
We're doing their house. It's nearly finished and it's going to be a lot of fun seeing them move into that. But it's just lovely to see. It's very inspiring.
How's that process been?
Great.
With family? Yeah.
So they're both doctors, but I didn't realise how much Jack had learnt about architecture, just hanging around it and growing up in it. And so he can understand the process, read a drawing, understand spatial issues and so on. So it's been very easy.
I'm surprised that your son's not an architect.
Well, can I say that Anne-Marie and I cracked a bottle of champagne when he announced that he wanted to be a doctor? Is that the wrong thing to say?
On a podcast episode about inspiring the next generation, maybe yes, but, you know.
There's a lovely security of income with medicine.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Sean. It's been great to chat.
My pleasure. Thanks, Katelin.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode, which is supported by the Australian Institute of Architects. If you're enjoying this podcast, be sure to subscribe, share, or leave a rating. I'm Georgia Burks, and this has been Design Speaks Weekly. Design Speaks Weekly is produced on Boon Wurrung country. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and recognise their continuing connection to land, waters, and culture.